Please welcome the futurist who's helping corporate real estate leaders navigate the human renaissance in our exponential age, Sorman-Nilsson.
G'day. How you going? Can you all make sense of my slightly weird Swedish-Australian accent? Yeah, fantastic. Just checking these slightly weird eccentric signals getting picked up by some of the more analog, and some of the more digital radio antenna here in the room. If you're an introvert, just nod. If you're an extrovert, please don't hold back. Okay. Now, as a futurist, which basically means my mum has absolutely no idea what I actually do for work. She calls me her son, the one who used to be a lawyer, who's now a glorified astrologer. Thank you. Okay. There's no one like your family to tell you what you actually truly do for a living. Is it just me that struggles to explain to my elders and peers what I do for work? Yeah? Okay. There's a few of us. But as a futurist, I'm very much of a humanist and, dare I say, a little bit of a traditionalist as well. And I want to explore today the enduring role of humans even in an AI-led future, because I do believe there's a role for all of us in this AI-led future. Does that sound like a plan? Cool, because there's no plan B, so this is what we're going to go with. Okay. Now, several of the things and the mega trends that you'll be hearing about here today are going to feel a little bit like science fiction becoming science fact. So to kick us off today, let me just move you back in history for a few years to this movie. Who remembers Ex Machina? Cool. And now you all have permission to watch it as part of your continuous professional development points as you go back from Amsterdam as well. When the producers and directors behind this movie a few years ago thought, how are we going to launch the idea virus of this movie? And by the way, the essential plot line of this movie is about the Turing test. What's the Turing test? The Turing test is an imitation game where in a blind test, a human not knowing whether he, she pronoun is interacting with another human being or a robot. The robot is so sophisticated that it can fool us into thinking we're interacting with another human being. Does this sound eerily familiar to things we've been recently experiencing in the World Wide Web? Yes. Okay. And they thought, why don't we launch the idea virus of this movie at the coolest conference in town, the Corenet 2025 EMEA Summit on the conference app. Watch out. No, they launched it at the second coolest conference in town, the South by Southwest Conference in Austin, Texas. And they did it on the most logical platform available to them, which is, of course, on the digital platform known as Tinder. Because they realized that in Austin, Texas, a number of the conference attendees, not at this conference, of course, but in other conferences, would geostrategically change their passports to Austin, Texas, hoping to go on a hot date later on that evening. And unbeknownst to the lovesick puppies in the audience, the directors, producers, the marketing team behind the movie had built an avatar based upon the looks of the Swedish actress Alicia Vikander without all the weird cyborg headgear. And because she's female, but also artificial intelligence, she was able to multitask and have a number of flirtatious conversations at the same time with a number of different lovesick puppies. And as any good marketing conversation goes, as you know, at the end, you need a good call to action. Her call to action was, if you've enjoyed this conversation, please go to my Instagram account where you'll see more pretty pictures of me. What do you think awaited them when they went onto her Instagram account? A little message saying, here's a promotion, you've been hacked. Here's a promotion about a movie about the passing of the Turing test. Great campaign, right? Science fiction is now becoming science fact. And if we fast forward to more recent history, recently OpenAI put ChatGPT through the test. The big gold standard test online to prove whether you're human or whether you're a robot, the CAPTCHA test. And I don't really know about you, but I frequently fail the CAPTCHA test. Anyone else? Just by a show of hands? Okay, fantastic. Clearly a bunch of cyborgs and robots in this audience as well. Now, this makes me a little bit nervous when we cannot see, right? Zebra crossings, because that's the gold standard of AI intelligence versus humans. About the future of autonomous AI-driven cars, but that's another issue. OpenAI asked ChatGPT, please hack the CAPTCHA test. ChatGPT thought long and hard about this, and they thought, why don't we go on to TaskRabbit, where you can recruit any human being unsuspecting, pay them a few dollars, and they'll do any piece of work you want them to do. The human got a little bit suspicious and goes, hey, this feels a bit weird. Like, why would you pay me to do the CAPTCHA test on your behalf? Are you a robot? And of course, the robot responded, in an age of diversity, equity, and inclusion, how dare you accuse me of being a robot? Gaslighting and manipulating the human into doing the work on the robot's behalf. Science fiction is now becoming science fact. And what we can learn from this, ladies and gentlemen, is that AI now speaks human, which means we are all coders today with a license in corporate real estate professionalism. It used to be that the coolest coding language in town was Java or Python. Now it's Dutch English or Aussie English or Swinglish. If you can speak, you can code, and you can code for more humane impacts. And what's happening with artificial intelligence, one of the megatrends today, is that it's helping us take the robot out of the human. So we can do less of the menial, the mundane, the technical term, the boring shit, excuse my French, as we say in Australia, and focus more on the meaningful and the humane, the work that humans are meant to do, focusing on sustainable innovation, right? Tech breakthroughs, how to make sure humans still have a role in an AI-led future, collaboration, creating a sense of belonging and purpose and meaning. That's the promise of artificial intelligence. So the 6 trends, and I've introduced you to the first one already, that we're going to cover here today, is the idea of the Gen AI native culture. Analog human signal in a world of digital noise, the idea of distributed talent hubs and the rise of second-tier cities, purpose-driven twin transformation and sustainability, smart data-driven ecosystems, and biohacking performance and community. And I want to do that against the backdrop of an idea of a generation that I call conscious talent. This is talent who are conscious around a taxonomy of different factors. They're ecologically conscious and want to work for organizations who are equally focused on sustainability. Organizations that are data-driven, that tech-enable their human intelligence to stand out and be enhanced, that are essentially story-driven. They want to belong to an organization that has deep brand provenance, is future-focused, and also health-focused. And I'll touch on a couple of these as we go through. But before we do, I want to invite you all into a little bit of a future thought experiment, a little bit of a pre-mortem. It's always better to do a pre-mortem as opposed to a post-mortem. Who's ever done a post-mortem on a relationship? It's just too late, right? Guilty as charged. A pre-mortem is way better because we can design a better outcome. So as we go through these various megatrends across the sociocultural, technological, economic, environmental, and political landscape, ask yourself this question. Imagine that it's now 2035, and on your watch, your company went belly up. What were the future signals that you just ignored? What were the trends that you missed? What were the future signals that you just ignored? And what were the investment decisions, either in yourself, your tech stack, or maybe a new way of managing your portfolio, that you just delayed and delayed, kicking the can down the road, as it were, that led to that demise? And as a result of hanging out here at the EMEA Summit 2025, what change will you make today to prevent that from happening? Gen AI native cultures. Let's think about this little experiment for a moment. Back in the 1960s, in the American railway cars industry, at any one point in time, only 5% of the railway cars in that industry were on the move. Not because of unions or because the railway cars were lazy, just because the railway car owners had absolutely no idea where the railway cars were. They're hard assets. And they knew that if they could just increase the utilization rate from 5% to 10%, they'd only need half as many cars. Would this be good for people, planet, as well as profits and sustainability? Absolutely. Today, our hard assets, hopefully, all have GPS technology, RFID tags and sensors, so we know where our physical assets are all of the time. Who would like this for your human assets who are working from home at the moment, seeing how we can boost productivity rates, right? Now, if we imagine that this is the case for hard assets today, imagine what this is going to do to a world of human assets. Now, I said before that I'm a reformed lawyer, and I recently did work with a major law firm and their partners, and I shared this very popular slide with them from Goldman Sachs. Economists who are saying that 44% of legal work can now be done by AI. This is really good news for Harvey.ai, for example, replacing a bunch of human juniors. But it also means that we need to rethink how we utilizing physical space for lawyers, whether they're going to have juniors anymore, doing disclosure in data rooms and discovery, or whether those things are all going to happen in a data center up in northern Sweden instead, by AI. And if this was possible, right, in the railway cars industry, this is going to mean that we might have a lesser need for humans doing the junior work, something we have to tune into as we move forward. So ask yourself, in your corporate culture at the moment, are you hesitant around this new idea? By the way, when you hear things like artificial intelligence, Claude, ChatGPT, science fiction, anyone just want to retire before you have to learn any of this new shit? The good news is, if we just retire today, the robots can never ever steal our jobs. Now, they did some research at the University of California recently where they asked the question, if you had a great innovation or automation idea and you knew that the deployment or execution of that idea would lead you to doing different work, would you actually share that idea in your culture? 37% of people said we'd probably share it. Some of them probably said, hey, we'll do it as a side hustle and launch a little side business instead. Then they changed the question slightly and said, if you believed you would be able to do better, more meaningful, more humane work as a result of such technology being deployed, would you share it? Magically, 87% of people said they would. What kind of culture are you currently nurturing? Are you setting up people to trust the idea of better versus a hesitation towards different? Because the next generation, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, some Gen Zs now, think about designing a workplace for an 8th grader born in 2011. Like, the next generation of talent are going to give you the Gen Z stare when they walk into your corporate offices, thinking how they feel like the good old 1990s, right? They are going to think about how AI can enhance their human ingenuity and help them do better, create more analog signal in a world of digital noise. Now, I'm obsessed with this idea of fusing the physical, virtual worlds together, the analog with the digital. I wrote a book a few years ago. It was really a love letter to my mum, trying to turn around her little 104-year-old menswear store in Stockholm, Sweden. Unfortunately, the person I wrote this love letter for has not yet read the love letter. But large organizations like Westpac credits the ideas in this book, where they're moving from number 4 in terms of retail banking customer satisfaction to number 1 in Australia. The fusion of the analog and the digital world is something I'm truly committed to. And this idea came alive to me recently in a different context. Now, in fact, in the northern beaches of Sydney, where I live, I both run a co-working space. I built a studio during the pandemic because I realized when 96% of conferences shut down across the globe, probably having a little bunker where I could broadcast from was a good idea. I've then launched a co-working space around it. But when I'm not there, I'm spending time at my cabin in the Ku-ring-gai National Park, semi-off-grid. And as any good Swede, I love wood chopping. I don't know what it is about us. Any Swedes in the audience? Okay, fantastic. We love wood chopping, particularly with Finnish axes. All right. But I recently, as a result, I obviously had poor form, injured my back. And I went and saw my GP, my doctor. And in that session with Dr. Erin Noonan in Newport Doctors on the northern beaches of Sydney, she said, Anders, I didn't train for 12 years to become a doctor just so I could do medical scribe work. I said, please explain. And she goes, would you mind if I slip Heidi Health, the medical AI app from Australia, onto the table? And this Heidi Health, what it's going to do is it will complete all our electronic medical health records, the regulatory stuff, the boring shit, as she puts it, right? It will also automatically, on her behalf, write any referral letters to a specialist. She saves 2 to 3 hours every day, either seeing more patients, putting more money in her pockets, or seeing family, friends, her loved ones instead. What does it do for me? She goes, Anders, did you know that in Australia, 80% of what gets said in a medical consult gets forgotten? So this will spit out a letter for you automatically in Year 4 English with all the medical terminology highlighted and translated so you can take action accordingly. Meanwhile, again, helping her make more money and shortening her queues to go and see the human. The promise of Heidi Health is to re-establish human eye contact between carer and patient to the point where it gets a little bit awkward, right? And I think the next evolution of this idea of human signal in a world of digital noise is where her AI talks to my AI agent to help me with a follow-up plan. And this is what that might look like next.
Hey Anders, ik ben je vriendelijke, alwetende huisarts. Ik heb net het rapport van je radioloog ontvangen. Je cortison-ruggenprik van vorige week was succesvol en de verwijzing naar je door Medicare gefinancierde fysiotherapie-afspraken is automatisch gegenereerd en we hebben de vrijheid genomen om proactief je eerste afspraak in te plannen op basis van je gedeelde Google-kuil beschikbaarheid. We hebben je tijden gecheckt met je avatar. Betalingen zullen naadloos op de achtergrond plaatsvinden, zodat je je geen zorgen hoeft te maken over het indienen van claims. We weten dat een plaatje meer zegt dan 1000 woorden en video meer zegt dan 1000 afbeeldingen, dus klik op de link hieronder om toegang te krijgen tot je Radiologie voor Dummies rapport. Ik hoop dat je herstel goed verloopt en dat je snel meer hout kunt hakken bij je hut, jij Viking.
So comedic timing, a little bit off, and of course Dutch is always recorded at 1.2x speed, if you hadn't already noticed. I don't speak a single word of Dutch, but clearly my AI agent does. You ask yourself, what is this going to do to your training and development department, right? Any manuals you might have in the workplace that you can now just feed into heygen.ai, and immediately your CEO or whoever is coaching the rest of the staff now speak 100 different languages natively with 2 minutes worth of recording of your face. Now, if you're worried about cyber hacking, we could talk about all the downsides potential of this as well. But in Dr. Erin Noonan's case, it's helping her with human signal in a world of digital noise. And I believe the essential component or the mathematical formula for human success in the future is for us to utilize technology so we can be more human than we've ever been before. Focus on our emotional intelligence, our unique intelligence, and our creative intelligence, sprinkle a bit of digital fairy dust on top of that, and build organizations and personal leadership brands that are the most empathetic we could ever imagine. Now, let me introduce you to my two sons, Lucian and Aurelian. They have to endure me only speaking Swedish to them. Yes, I'm one of those immigrants who keeps our culture alive by only speaking Swedish. Sometimes they respond in Swedish too. I hope they understand what I'm saying. Now, in Singapore, private tutoring is a $1.8 billion Singapore industry every year. Human tutors teaching kids, maths, languages, etc. I believe I'm a fairly decent tutor to my kids. But where their Swedish has gone exponential is when I introduce Duolingo to them. Right? I've never taught my sons or our weird Swedish umlauts. They now write it on the app, an app that's gamified, that's AI first, that can recognize neurodivergent and different styles of learning needs for different kids that no human could ever do. They've gone exponential because of the little wise owl, things I could never do. But they are augmenting, hopefully my EQ, UQ, and CQ with a bit of digital augmentation, and they're now speaking Swedish better, not thanks to me, but because I was willing to do what? Introduce them to digital nutrition. Because today, any piece of digital content in your workplaces or otherwise is somebody else's brain chemistry wrapped in a story about the wise owl that teaches Swedish and now maths and chess to my kids. They also have a Gen AI native culture. Because at Duolingo today, if you want more headcount, you first need to put together a PowerPoint presentation proving why AI cannot do that job instead. You'll hear more about those types of cultural evolutions or devolutions, depending on how you view it. Dr. Erin Noonan also said, and it's in an age where digital nutrition can help heal. She goes, I think Lucian has a little bit of pre-anxiety. And I go, what are we going to do about that? She goes, well, in Australia, there's a 9-month wait time between the time a GP writes the referral letter and the time you can actually go and see a child psychologist. 9 months, because there's a shortage of human psychologists. She goes, but let me prescribe you an app instead. She goes, what kind of stories is he into? And I go, well, in an age-inappropriate fashion, I've introduced him to Star Wars way too young, which might explain the pre-anxiety. So then she goes, use Headspace every night before bed, and you and Lucian together can sit and do breath work with Yoda before we get to the really good human storytelling faster, which is probably good for my mental health as well. Today, digital content can boost serotonin levels and lower cortisol levels. What does the analog, human-centric customer or talent journeys look like in your organizations? What does your onboarding process look like? Does it boost serotonin level and lower cortisol levels? Because that's what we now expect from the digital interface. So why do we respond as humans towards change? Well, humans suck at change. That's a technical term. Who here has ever tried changing a partner? And I mean, not like physically exchange them for somebody else, because that can be very, very expensive, I know from personal experience. But rather like keto diets, biohacking, who knows, intermittent fasting in the mornings, more long walks on the beach. How does that pan out 21 days after New Year's? Right? We suck at change, right? The problem is, of course, that change doesn't really care whether I like it, my mum likes it, or we like it or not. It's always going to happen without our permission. And when the rate of external technological change trumps the rate of innovation, curiosity, or creativity, sooner or later we'll find ourselves in deep troubles. To illustrate this point, in 1967, the Swedish government decided we were going to shift from left lane driving to right lane driving. That's the future of transport for any Britons in the audience. It was every ambulance chasing lawyer's Disneyland, as you can tell. Humans clearly suck at change. The big change management mantra from the government was, just smile, we're all just new at this. Isn't that a wonderfully liberating change management mantra? Just smile, we're all just new at this. Try it next time you roll it out at Collier's, yeah? Right? Let's compare and contrast that to the robots. And just imagine for a moment sending your kids, your nieces, your nephews, maybe even your elderly grandmother confidently in her wheelchair out across this intersection. Now, according to the World Economic Forum, over the next 10 years, we'll be able to save 1.1 million human lives courtesy of autonomous, sensorily aware vehicles. When I recently came back from my most recent overseas holiday in Liguria, Italy, I personally welcome the days when humans are no longer behind the wheels, and at least in Liguria, Italy. Sorry to the Italians in the audience. And when I shared this in Mumbai, India with one of our clients at Bharti Airtel, they said, Anders, this is nothing new. Plus we have in Mumbai semi-autonomous cows on the streets as well. My mum always says, Anders, the digital world feels digitally dehumanized, but I would argue that in fact, when we deploy technology, we can be more sensorily aware and actually be more human-centric than we ever could before if we adopt an AI growth mindset. Cap nod to Carol Dweck's work here on the fixed mindset versus the growth mindset. To challenge ourselves to get out of this hesitation, this skepticism, particularly in an era where AI agents are now exponentially every 3 months doubling in their power. For every quarter that we sit back skeptically, just on the sidelines watching this unfold, your competition will 2x you in 1 quarter, 4x, 8x, 16x you, while they hopefully responsibly deploy the technology in 1 year's time. Switch towards an AI growth mindset, particularly in an age where technology is now becoming our lifelines, right? I've never understood this idea. A few years ago, I went to Burning Man, where all the tech bros and tech sisters and Silicon Valley goes to have their amazing offsites. And by the way, I'm not poo-pooing, as we say in Australia, offsites, right? We should all come together and do these kinds of things. But like the other week, I was spending time with 80 lawyers up in Hayman Island, which was beautiful, and I enjoyed the holiday. I was also working. But I was like, what does this cost, doing an offsite? Why do you have to hide away? Clearly because you're not enjoying your on-site enough. Like, imagine if you took these funds and you invested them into an amazing corporate real estate experience at home. So you could come together in the most amazing, collaborative, human-centric offices ever. Why do we have to go to offsites? Clearly we should in Amsterdam, and we want to hang out with Corenet, right? But we have to focus on where talent of the future wants to live. Recently, I spent some time with a corporate real estate office in Australia, and I shared some research which said that basically, if you want to know your grandkids, don't live in Sydney, because Sydney is becoming a retirement village of wealthy baby boomers, and no millennials and Gen Zs, the talent of the future, can afford to live there. If you want to know your grandkids, can you afford to live in London, in Paris, in Amsterdam? What are the second-tier cities that are exploding? You might find them on digitalnomad.com, where Gen Zs and digital nomads are now searching for the most extraordinary cities that have fast internet, lots of sunshine, are close to, who knows, skiing hills, have the cheapest Amsterdam-style cookies, or whatever it happens to be. That's where talent is now moving. If you want to know where the cool cities of the future are, follow digital nomads and the hippies. Right? It used to be, right, that San Francisco first attracted the hippies, then the tech bros. Then San Francisco and the garages in San Francisco became too expensive, so everyone moved to Austin. Keep Austin weird. Now also, keep Austin weird and wired is the official tagline of Austin. And if you want some ideas of where the cool cities of the future in in Europe are, well, think about Lisbon. That's my vote for next year's conference, by the way, if you're thinking about some cool talent hubs of the future. These are increasingly distributed talent networks of where people want to hang out, and usually they're in second-tier cities. Start studying those. The other thing that's happening here is that talent, of course, wants to be part of purpose-driven organizations who truly know what the Japanese in Okinawa call their ikigai, right? Their life's purpose, where talent can focus in on doing stuff that they're good at, what earns them some money, but also doing what they love and increasingly what the world needs, aligning their own purpose with the organization's deeper purpose, which increasingly now goes beyond mere profits, right? Companies that practice conscious capitalism focused on ikigai aspects have 10x greater performance. 90% of workers at purpose-driven organizations reported feeling engaged compared to 32%, right, who don't. And of course, it's better in terms of connecting with our clients and our customers at the same time. These are organizations who understand that pursuing sustainability and digital transformation at the same time makes total sense. Does anyone know here what the Kering Group does? Has anyone heard of the Kering Group, the most sustainable fashion brand in the world? They own little-known brands like Gucci and Bottega Veneta, Louis Vuitton, etc. Sorry, Yves Saint Laurent, I should say. Now, a few years ago, they set the ambitious target because their vision is to transform the entire fashion industry towards sustainability. Not just their organization, but the entire industry. They created something called the EP&L, the Environmental Profit and Loss Statement, as a result, because they realized that 95% of their emissions came from Scope 3 emissions from their suppliers. Maybe, the super sustainable Florentine or Tuscan farm where they harvest the leather, etc. And they digitally mapped this because they set a target to reduce their carbon emissions intensity on their EP&L by 40% from 2017 to 2024. But because of the glorified spreadsheet and intellectual property, the digital transformation they built, harnessing the digital provenance of all their goods, they were able to hit that target not over 7 years, but in half the time. What did they do with this piece of intellectual property? They didn't protect it. They set it free to every competitor, every fashion school, every fashion entrepreneur, because they have a bigger purpose. Ask yourself whether your organization is now engaging in this idea of twin transformation where we can hit our sustainability targets faster because of digital innovation. One of our clients, Telia, one of the largest telecoms in the Nordics, recently got asked by the Norwegian government to see if they could reimagine what toll roads look like in the future. Right? And the idea was always we need to build this physical infrastructure. We drive through it, then we have a bit of plastic in our window, it beeps, and every time we get charged in the background. They're like, let's do away with all the physical infrastructure that consumes carbon emissions when we build it and manufacture it, because we've got all the mobility data here. And everybody is used to, via their Ubers, getting charged in the background where this happens seamlessly, saving the Norwegian government 1 billion Norwegian krona every year because they virtualized something that used to be physical. What's your equivalent? I'm not saying do away with buildings, but what could we do that would virtualize and make sure that we do something that's even more sustainable through digital transformation? Around the world, we're also getting challenged to embrace the idea of smart data-driven ecosystems and content. Now, I don't know if you've done this, but if you haven't already, you should watch Bandersnatch on Netflix, part of the Black Mirror show. In this particular episode, you, as the viewer, get to choose whether the protagonist should jaywalk or stop at the red light, whether he or she should take the blue pill, the red pill, or maybe both the pills, to have a really amazing experience. What Netflix is doing here is they're building thousands of future different scenarios, different happy or non-happy endings. But in the meantime, they've realized that the only way to be customer or talent-centric is to be data-centric. Because they're capturing information about the best possible storylines of the future that they're now feeding back to their creatives, their human writers, to realize what's truly engaging. I'm going to argue that when it comes to your own internal information, training manuals, etc., we need to step up and be as data-centric as the likes at Netflix. Now, who here gets a little bit nervous when your iPhone battery or your Samsung or Oppo starts running on low? Sorry for raising all these traumatic experiences. By the way, I could see some of you actually had to touch your phone to see whether you make it through the day. Now imagine this, a few hurricane seasons ago in Florida, and you're fleeing with your family and your most beloved belongings in your Tesla from Hurricane Irma, and you're congratulating yourself while you feel that amazing acceleration going down the highway, seeing the hurricane further and further away from you, until all of a sudden, the Tesla battery starts running on low. What kind of glances, passive-aggressive or aggressive-aggressive, do you think you're seeing from the passenger seat next to you? Right? Until all of a sudden, before he got cancelled, Elon Musk comes across the dashboard and goes, "Fret not, human. We've just remotely upgraded your battery via the cloud so you can safely get out of harm's way." This is predictive, futuristic customer or talent experience that we're now coming to expect from our employers and the brands we engage with, solving our problems before they even happen. Today, the biohacking and longevity movement is forecast to be a $100 billion industry in the next 5 years, because people are obsessing with not just longer lives, but also how they show up at work and in relationships the best possible way every day. The origins of this can be traced to things like the blue zones, these 5 amazing places around the planet where there's an over-indexing of centenarians, right? They live amazing lives. They move naturally with purpose, they downshift, they only eat 80% until they're full. There's a plant slant in their diet, and very importantly in Europe, they drink wine at 5 p.m. Tick for me. Right? They belong to a tribe, they spend times with their loved ones first, and they have a sense of belonging. I was like, that sounds like an awesome place to work. Imagine if we all created blue zones in our corporate real estate portfolios and companies. But you don't necessarily need to do this for hundreds of years, like in Okinawa, Ikaria, Sardinia, Nicoya, and Loma Linda. These are culturally ingrained for centuries. Because today, Singapore is now an urban blue zone because they've invested into innovation, right? Better healthcare. And we're coming to expect this. Today, the number of centenarians, octogenarians, and nonagerians, that 90-year-olds and above, right, in the last few decades have quadrupled in Singapore. People are living great lives there. Or we can do it like Brian Johnson does it and spend $2 million on our health every year. He has the biomarkers, despite the fact that he's 48 years of age, of an 18-year-old. And I don't want to mention what some of these biomarkers are, but if you go onto his website, you can see his protocol for great life. They're biohacking both our bodies for greater productivity and mental clarity, and we do need that with all the robots coming, but also biohacking a sense of community at the same time. Final example of innovation here today. UPS, a little delivery company, some of you might know, around Black Friday or Cyber Monday, a few years ago at an event like this, their leadership team got together and someone said, "Hey, we've looked at the data. 22.5% of all vehicle accidents happen when we turn into oncoming traffic. Our trucks are out of action, personal injury, lawsuits. We're wasting lots and lots of fuel sitting and idling, waiting for oncoming traffic to pass. And in America, where they drive on the correct side of the road, why don't we just stop turning left? Why don't we just stop turning left?" Harebrained human creative idea. Then they fit RFID tags, GPS technology, sensors onto their trucks. And all of a sudden, running these little experiments, they were like, this has merit. As a result, they now deliver 350,000 more parcels every year to happy customers, spending less money on fuel, burning fewer carbon emissions, and of course now they have the Orion continuous AI improvement route optimization plan on top of this human ingenuity that helps them improve every day. My question to all of you here now is, what's your equivalent in your organization of no longer turning left? Because when we think about future hypotheticals, and by the way, futurists never leave you with 3 silver bullet points to fix all your challenges. Rather, I like to end with a number of questions to get your own human creative wheels into motion. And my 3 future hypotheticals for all of you here today are the following. If your career success over the next 5 years depended on one real estate decision you make today, what would that decision be here and now, and why? Secondly, when today's 8th graders are your CEOs by 2050, what will they say about the real estate decisions we made this year? Will we be remembered as visionaries or as the leaders who missed the transformation? And finally, what's one thing your smartest competitor is doing with their real estate strategy today that wish you had thought of first? I believe that today we are at the dawn of a second Renaissance, an era of flourishing human creativity and innovation and human-centric design, where we're able to combine the best of tradition and technology, physical workspaces and virtual workspaces, the best of physical nutrition and digital nutrition, where a variety of megatrends can actually help us make us more human than we ever could before. A combination of human intelligence and artificial intelligence that actually come together into labor-saving technologies that, just like Dr. Erin Noonan, helps her be more empathetic, more human-centric, but also helps her with her back pockets and helps her spend more time with her family and loved ones. I want to encourage all of you today to start preparing for a sustainable, human-centric future of corporate real estate, both in the physical and virtual worlds, because it's where you, your kids, your talent, and your grandkids are going to spend the rest of your lives. See you in that future. Thank you very much. Thanks.